Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. I am back from PRI. If you haven't had a chance to watch those videos about the new products, you can make sure to check those out. Um, anyway, take a look. At the end of this video, I'm actually going to talk about my airline experience because I think I have the worst luck ever. But that's not what this video is about. This one is about what to look for if you're trying to buy used heads, because these heads just came in and I get to work on these. But I'm going to show you some things that you can look out for. Maybe it'll help you if you ever just want to buy heads used, say from someone off of Facebook or whatnot, and what to look forward to. So that's what this video is. However, if you are new to my channel, or if you're not new, here's what you need to look forward to. Things are coming up. There's so much projects out here that I want to show. One, and it came in right when I got back from PRI, it was waiting for me, is a set of Brodix BR3 LS3 heads. I've already flowed them. I'm going to do a separate video on those, and that may come out Friday. If not, there's other ones coming too. There's a bunch of stuff that I'm getting ready to put out, and chances are it's probably not just going to be Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, because there's so much. And honestly, I'm running out of storage on my phone, so it's like put out a video, record something just to put it out. Anyway, take a peek at it. So there's like I said, Brodix LS3 heads, that's a good one. I finished up the chamber work on the IK heads if you watch my old videos, so I can show you what you can do to fix the chamber stuff. This head right here is a perfect example of what you could fix for. Anyway, some different things. But let's get started with today's video. So a customer sent these in case you're wondering, what head is this? This is a Brodix-13. It's actually one of my favorite heads, and it's for a small block Chevy. It is a 13-degree head. It's a raised runner deal, obviously, and Brodix makes this. I have ported at least 3 sets. You might say, you haven't done more? No, because in all fairness, once you get into these heads, they cost so much, most people just don't do it. They go on to a big block, which, can you blame them? For instance, my best set of these went 422 CFM. I think I make about 1,000 horsepower, but for what they cost more than a set of big block heads that would make 1,100. So it's at a certain point, someone just changes NA. So anyway, these are a really nice head for a small block Chevy though. Out of the box, they do not flow that. So I'm going to talk about what the head is and then what you should look for. I'm just telling you because you need to know what they start with so you can see what you're going to be looking for. They start off, Brodix has these CNC ported. That's the only way they offer them. I mean, you could buy them as cast, I guess, but they'll be super small. But they're CNC ported and the port is really tiny. And it's because this head was actually made for a circle track like Elite model. Now, those who don't know anything about dirt track racing, late models can run, usually some classes can run a 13-degree head, and this is what they choose to run. If you've watched my video about the difference between a drag port and a circle track ports are typically smaller because they need to have a broader horsepower and torque range so they can accelerate off the corners. That is not the same way with drag racing. Point being is, this head, as it comes from Brodix, or as it is in this configuration, is really meant more for circle track than it is for drag racing. If I port them and make them like they should be for drag racing, then it is a different port design, much better for drag racing. So I point this out because the valve sizes I'm about to tell you sound a little weird. They come standard with a 218 and a 1625 exhaust valve. You heard that right, 1625. I don't put 1625 in anything. I just don't. Even the nitrous motors are 1.6 on small block stuff. We just don't do that. The reason why, you might ask, because I'd rather have a bigger intake valve than the exhaust valve. So just letting you know. So anyway, let's say you're on Facebook Marketplace and you saw these heads. And you're like, someone said 13-degree small block head. And you're like, wow, amazing, cool. I think I'm going to purchase them. It looks like a good price. What should you look for? Well, I'm going to tell you some things to look out for right away. First off, this head is the prime example. I want you to see this, and it may be harder to see with the camera. Here and here. You see this? The customer stated, and see how it's got rust here? I'll tell you to look out for that too. The customer poured water into the ports to see if it was leaking because he said he had a problem with that cylinder. And there's a reason. If you notice the way that the burn mark is on this, it's probably got a lot of fuel puddling right around the spark plug. And it's got a major problem that I'm going to get to in a minute. But I don't know the exact reason why heads do this, where it burns here and here. But this is so deep that I can actually, if I tried to, and I don't know if I can, you can see it, I can wiggle the seat. See it? Like I can actually wiggle that out. I bend it in anyway. I think what happens is this is caused because of pre-ignition or something that's to that effect of detonation or something in that area. Do I know for sure? No, but I've usually seen it when things aren't right in the engine. Usually that causes this. When on a great running engine that comes in for fresh up, never has this. Usually it's something related to spark. And typically, by the way, in a small block Chevy head, they usually on these two cylinders, one of these two. You might say, why? Small block Chevys, we have our exhaust ports together. And even though this is a spread port, he did not tap. See that? Well, it looks like it is. If you don't run water through here, to cool in between here, it can have some issues. But I want to say there was a plug in this side. But anyway, these two, point being, are hotter than the rest. So these two, because they're right next to each other, the heat is hotter than the end ones. So because of that, if you're going to have detonation, it's probably going to happen in either one of these two cylinders first on a small block Chevy. And I think that's what happened anyway. What other reason caused it? And here's the thing to look out for. If you get a set of used heads, look for the ridge. See that? And you see that? Okay, if they're CNC ported and you see this massive ridge, typically it means there's been a valve job done by someone. And they've sunk in the valve job. Sometimes that's a good indication that's been sunk in. Sometimes it's just they use a more aggressive seat cutter. It has a wider top cut and cuts into the chamber, creating that. This is not what you want to see. Because the problem whenever you see this, the thing you got to memorize is, think about is when you see that, the head's been serviced at least once. Because you wouldn't see that normally on most stuff that's CNC ported. You just don't. You don't see that big old ledge like that, especially like that on the exhaust. Because this ledge is here, it creates a hot spot because that entire ridge is right there over the exhaust. And you get the idea right there, especially hot in the corners. See what I mean? Super hot. They do not come this way from Brodix. So, first thing you want to look at, check out your chambers, see if it's got that. If you see that, chances are it's had a few services and too many. Most cylinder head guys, port-wise, do not leave it like this. When we do a valve job, we'll then blend it out. We will not leave it like that because of the issues I just mentioned. So typically, this is just a machine shop that just did a valve job. As a note, for cylinder head guys, it kills us when we see this. Because let's say you had a perfect head. Like this thing, I'm going to flow it anyway. But this thing typically flows 360, which are like, for a 13-degree head, that's the best it did. Yeah, circle track port. But anyway, I'm going to flow it. I bet you it flows far worse. So as a cylinder head guy, we see these come in and they've been sunk down or they haven't been blended out. You just killed the head. So it's like all the work on the port. Remember, the most of your flow was 1 inch before the valve job and 1 inch after. And this right here just murdered it. So do all the fancy work, got a nice perfect port. Someone goes in and freshens it up because, hey, I got to get it done. I ain't got time for you to wait. I don't want to ship them off. You get that, you're like, run slower. Why? Kills us. Okay. Anyway, that's one thing you look for. Look for that. Next thing you should look for, and this one's a kind of a different deal. Always look to see how the chamber's shaped each one. See where my marker's going. Okay. So I'm about to show you there. You see it? It's slightly different. And there it is. This is a sign that something else has gone on. See how it's got little marks here? That shouldn't be that way. When you see something where the chamber's not the same as the rest, take a closer look. Usually this indicates damage. And I found it. Look, the head's been welded. Do you see the weld? Those are beads. Chances are this head had some damage at some point. A piston let go or something. Anyway, if you ever had an engine destroyed, you'll know that even though the piston might break in this hole, somehow you get junk in different holes. And that's probably what happened. This head also has something weird here, which I don't know if they're just trying to get room for a bracket or something, but they ground the whole face of it here. I haven't seen that before, but I imagine that's the reason for it. Next thing. Silicone. There's not a lot of water flow. You don't have to use this much. Just letting you know, just sidebar. Okay, so after looking at that, look at your chambers, and then if you see it, look for weld. So if you're like, wow, that one looks a little strange, start looking for damage. And don't look for just this head, look at other ones. The next thing you need to do is look at the deck. This one actually looks pretty good, except for you see this line here, it's not because it's been O-ringed. If you use a steel gasket, or there's a steel ring gaskets, they'll brittle, that's what this is called. It leaves a dent in here. Now you're like, so big deal to seal up. No, not really, because if you do it with a different gasket at all, and you try bolting it back on, sometimes it won't seal. So in other words, the head's gonna have to be surfaced. Not a big deal, but just saying something to look forward to. If you ever see scuff marks, like someone used a Scotch-Brite on this deal, automatically you need to think in your head, this thing's gotta be milled or surfaced right off, because it's for sure not flat anymore. So look for that. Now, the thing that you can't see, and most people won't let you see, is, hey, what do I do about, how do I know about anything else? Is the valve job good? The only way you can really tell is you could take it to a local machine shop. If they got a vacuum tester, you could vacuum test it, have them see if it holds a vacuum. Okay? That's one thing you could do. But there's a bigger problem, pressure testing. Because you can look at the head, look at everything, like, no, there's no problem at all. Bolt it to your engine, start spraying water. So if I was you, the hardest part is to be like, look, buddy, I need to have these checked out. If they check out with the machine shop, will pay your price. Of course, from the seller's point of view, they're like, look, I'm not letting you take my heads and you're not paying me. No. So it's such a hard deal with buying used heads. But those are just some things to look out for. And you're like, I don't feel like I got much from this video. I know. I wish I could give you more. The biggest thing is, if you see this, it means it's been valve jobbed too many times. Always look through the center here. In case you're wondering what's going to happen with this, like how do they fix it? Well, what's going to happen is these two seats, because they're interlocking, which means this exhaust seat's actually cut into the intake seat, which means you can't just change one. These two are coming out. The welders are going to go up and weld this back in. We're going to recut the seat register, which is what the seat sits on, put two new seats in, new valve job, and that should be good to go. Luckily, it's only on this one. Now, about the rest of this, what's going to happen is I'm going to put my own valve job in, and then I'm going to grind these out anyway. And then I'm going to surface the head anyway to get the CCs back in the chamber. So that's not the bad deal. That actually doesn't look that bad. If you ever see a weld like this, but you start seeing like, it looks like pepper in the deck, walk away. Chances are it was a bad repair and it's weak there. And you're just about to get problems. Speaking of which, if you ever get a deck too and you see a bunch of pepper and there's no welding, walk away. There was this one Pontiac Kaufman head years ago I'd done. A guy brought it to me and everything, and I had it surfaced, because at the time I didn't have my surfacer, and it came back. When you surface, if it does it right, the surface is perfectly smooth and you could see things. The entire deck surface was pepper. Well, he had me do some port work, and I ported it, and you could see pepper and everything. That's porosity. That scared the living daylights out of me as far as that. So look for that. The other thing you really should look for too, and a lot of people miss this, is the rocker studs themselves. Look at the holes. Now, Brodix always have their helicoils, but always check that out. So if you see one that's been stripped, or if it's got a time cert, there's something to keep in mind, but always check those, because I don't know how many people buy a set of heads and everything else looks good and the rocker studs are bad, like the threads are gone. Seen it several times. So kind of a whole bunch of stuff to think about. You might as well think anytime you buy a used set of heads too, that the valves and all valve train are trash. So look at the price, calculate what a new valve train kit costs, which is new valves and springs and retainers and locks. And that's what you should figure out what the head would cost and how that compares to a new set of heads. Because they might say, and I've heard this too, and I'm sure you guys have, it's only got 5 passes on. Since they had it, the person before had 500 circle track miles or something. You never know. The valves also, you just never know. Typically, you can reuse them. I'll say that typically. These obviously won't, because I'm going to go to a bigger intake valve, which means the exhaust valve's getting shrunk down, which means it's getting new valves anyway. But just calculate that. So that's a given. At least calculate springs and retainers and locks. I never reuse locks. They're like 35 bucks. It's just get new ones. But springs and retainers, just whatever you see the head price, count that in. Don't use what someone else has. You wouldn't rely on something that someone might or might not have run that much. So And that brings up another point too. The problem with selling anything used is because everybody wants to nickel and dime you. And the reason why is because everybody's been ripped off. There's several people that have sold stuff for high price stuff and then this garbage. So there's two people you could think of. The seller who's like, look, I know what I got. I spent $2,500 on my set of heads. I want $2,000. And then you have the actual guy that's trying to buy them and is like, I'm not paying $2,000 for that. I can get a brand new set for $500 more, and I know they're good. And so then usually it ends up, the seller is the one that's going to end up losing. Do not think that just because, this is in case you post anything on Facebook, do not think because you bought a set of heads for $3,000 and you ran them for a year that they're worth $2,500. You're not going to get your money out of it. You're like, no, right now you could. Yes, the used market's at its highest point, but everybody's got a thing where they're like, no. And the other thing that stops them from spending that money is they don't know if you're a scammer. So I rarely sell used stuff. Like, it's pretty rare. Usually a customer's like, hey, can you try sell this? And I'll be like, no, I'll check it out. Everything's fine, because I won't sell garbage. So if you get it from like a business like myself, it's got a tax ID number, then you're usually in better shape than just buying from someone else that's on, Facebook or something. But anyway, hopefully that gives you some things to look out for. If you have questions or things you'd like to bring up, you can too. But I just saw this head come in. I was like, I should probably point that out. Look for those. And by the way, it's not a small block Chevy thing. Fords have this happen. I've seen it in LS's. It's a pretty common deal. Usually something's gone wrong. It's not that it can't be fixed, by the way. If you see it on all of them, don't buy the head. That repair will cost you more than most heads. So because you're talking about labor to remove this, welding, and then labor to put this back in, and then new valve job and everything, usually it's not worth it. So anyway, thanks for sticking around for this video. There is more to come. Oh, stop the video now if you don't want to hear anything else not related to racing, because I got to tell you my airport experience. Okay, here we go. So this is my PRI I hate airports thing. First off, I decided we were going to fly because I hate driving. You would think as someone that likes racing cars, you would love driving. I do not love driving because the amount of idiots that are on the road is phenomenal. I don't know what to say. Everybody's in a hurry, so everybody treats everybody else like crap on the roads. It's the best way I could describe it. So I wanted to fly, Anyway, 6 years ago when I went before to PRI, it wasn't that bad. We got on the plane. We had a layover. We got on the other plane, and we got there. And the same thing happened on the way home. No. When I took off from Tulsa, they had a screw loose in the plane and on the wing that they found on de-icing. By the way, we were leaving at 6 a.m. Like they were the first flight out for Tulsa that day. Why did no one check it in the entire night before the plane went out is beyond me. And that was Delta. 6 hours later, we finally get on the plane. Now, as anybody might know, Tulsa has no direct flights to just about anywhere. So you always have a layover and another flight out. You have a connection every time. Well, every one of us on that plane had a connection. And every one of us missed our connection because the plane was 6 hours from taking off. So we missed ours. So it dropped me off in Atlanta. The next plane it had to get to Indianapolis. They put me on standby, obviously. Luckily, I got on the first one, which was at and by the way, 6 a.m. is when the airplane was supposed to take off. I got at the airport at like 5 a.m. in the morning, which is like only an hour. Yeah, because my wife said that the airport doesn't open till 5. They're open at 4. Doesn't matter anyway. So when I finally got to Indianapolis, it was like 9 o'clock at night. I could have drove back and forth twice. Yeah. The return flight home, we left from Indianapolis, and who was on my plane? Doc from Street Outlaws. Also another Street Outlaw guy was actually next to me. I wish I'd started talking to him before the plane took off. I could have talked about more stuff. But anyway, took off. We were supposed to go from Indianapolis to Dallas, and then my Dallas connection to Tulsa. Get on the plane. We're on the plane. And I have no idea why, but they delayed. They was doing their de-icing. We were the first flight off again. De-icing, and then a forever wait, like 20 or 30 minutes. You guessed it. Missed my connection. Matter of fact, They're like, oh, we're only going to be 5 minutes late from touching down. You still have to get off the airplane. And on our airplane had a fantastic Karen of a woman. Doc actually said something to her, which was, that's the reason why Doc's my hero. In case you're wondering when it was happening. Was moaning when we were backing out before we'd even gotten in the air about how she was going to miss her connection because of this. Which it was garbage, but what can you do? Who are you yelling at? The flight crew ain't going to go in. I mean, the stewardess isn't going to make the plane fly any faster. So she just griped the whole time and total Karen. When we finally got down, they told, hey, they told us on the plane, there's like 200 and something people on this plane. Hey, if you guys are have a connection, if you guys this is your final destination, Dallas, please stay seated so the people with connection can go on and won't miss their connecting flight, because some of them are very tight schedules. Well, most of the people got up, because guess what? Most people weren't just there for Dallas. Well, Karen was not having that. So everybody's getting up, getting their bags, from the overhead bins. And she's freaking out like, no, these people just won't let us through. We got to get to our flight. What's taking so long? And all of us are listening to this, and we're just like, oh my gosh. Anyway, Doc's like, you're not the only one with a connection. So we all got to go through this. So Doc's my hero. But anyway, get off the plane. I take off like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, trying to make it to my next flight, because it's going to be close. The plane was supposed to leave at 10:27, and we had landed at 9:55. Time we got off the plane, it was like 10:05. So I'm literally running. If you ever know anything about Dallas Airport, oh my God, they've got all these terminals that are all separate. Like C terminals, not even all together. You got C 1 through 20 in one area, and C 21 through 40 in another one. And they're all connected by a tram, so it's not like you could just run to the next one. No, you got to wait for the Skynet, which is like a subway, to go on there. Oh, and that's what screwed me too, which wouldn't have mattered. But they're like, the subway thing says this way for C and D. Okay, so I get on that one. Little do I know, it's going to C and D after it goes to E20, E40, then E1, then D whatever. It's going, they don't have the directions. It just says get on this way for C. Well, everything's going to take you eventually to C because it's a big loop. But it wouldn't have mattered anyway, because where we landed, as far as where our terminal was halfway between either one. So run like Ferris Bueller, get there, finally get off the tram to the right terminal, run all the way down. It's 10:28, missed the flight. So I'm like, oh, okay. By the way, running with the mask on. Ooh. Yeah, I was exhausted. So I make it to the Dallas airport. Is horrible. Like the C one that is like C, the early terminal one, C1 through 20. It's a dump. And I know it's why I dumped, because I'm going to tell you in a second. So I go up to the counter. I'm like, yeah, I missed my flight. We got late. And they're like, it shows you only were 5 minutes late. And like, we still have to get off the plane. That's just when we touch down. And I'm like, well, we'll get you on standby on the next one. And as I'm doing this, there was this, like a wheelchair cart that the airlines use, was sitting in the way. Well, I didn't think much about it. Well, one of the other airline people go to move it, and they're like, no, and everybody starts freaking out. I'm like, no, leave it there. That's because of an accident. Well, they move it just enough away to see what I could see. It's a gigantic human turd. I'm talking, it's not a dog turd, because everybody's got dogs in there. If you listen to Joe Rogan not Joe Rogan Experience, Joe Rogan's comedy, when he talks about dogs at the airport. Thank you, brother. That's the first thing I thought was, no, it's a dog. It's not a dog. It's human turds. They're huge human turds. And he's like, someone had an accident. A big old pile of turds sitting in the airport. So I'm thinking to myself, some person paid to get on a plane that wasn't cheap, and then couldn't make it to the bathroom, and then pulled down their pants and took a gigantic dump right there in the middle of the terminal. And by the way, I should point this out. As I'm looking at the pile of turd, I literally look behind it, and it's 10 foot to the bathroom. 10 foot. I'm not even kidding. So there was either a person was in a dead sprint, or otherwise he shook a leg and shook it right out his pants. But it was popped right there. And I was like, oh my God. Well, they got me on standby. First one. And I got on, thank God. So I got back. Point is, again, that flight took longer than what it had taken to drive. So, but I hate driving so much. And by the way, if you've ever been on an airplane and you wonder how humanity's coming, I could tell you this. That was 4 airline flights I was on in that PRI trip. Each one of them had at least 2 assholes. So if you're wondering the percentage of people that are, well, you get the idea. It just proves how humanity is. Yeah, anyway. Thanks for making it through this. You made it through a 25-minute video. If you feel like you get much out of it, I'm sorry. I've got so much other stuff to show you, and it's going to be amazing. The LS3 thing's probably going to be on Friday. That's the Brodix one. And a whole bunch of other stuff in between. So you guys take care.